You can be seated. I want to really give two types of talks today. The first is prayerful and shared with me by my colleague and friend, Rabbi Rob Scheinberg, who actually grew up right here at Bethel, that he is an expert in liturgy, a wonderful teacher and rabbi. He is in Hoboken, New Jersey, where he's been for many, many, many years. And the second is different. And I was just told this week that it seems that recently I have been speaking often about mental health issues and that it has been sort of a trigger for some people. So I just want to say, if you'll get upset about that, then you can excuse yourself, and that is okay. I won't take it personally. Most people don't walk out at the beginning. They might walk out in the middle of what I have to say, so it won't be different. But I do have to say that since November and December, since the suicides in our community, I have been speaking about this more. And so it has certainly been hanging on my heart. They are probably correct. So first, from Rabbi Scheinberg, he writes this, which I think is so beautiful, reflecting on our parsha and pulling a verse from it. He writes, "When Jews pray, no matter where they are around the world, we face the city of Jerusalem. But what do you do if you're praying and you're located in Jerusalem itself? You face the place in Jerusalem where the temple stood. And what if you were right near where the temple stood? Or what would you do standing within the temple court itself? Well, then you would face the innermost part of the temple, the holiest part of the temple, the Kodesh HaKodeshim, the Holy of Holies, the area in the temple that was so holy that only the high priest would enter it, and only on Yom Kippur in conditions completely pure. And what would you do? What would the high priest have seen when they went into the Holy of Holies, the direction that we all pray? Well, at the very center of the Kodesh HaKodeshim was the Aron, the holy ark that contained the 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments. And immediately above the Aron was the Kaporet, the golden adornment with 2 golden images that were mirror images of each other, 2 images of winged beings called cheruvim. The Torah portion of the week, Parshat Truma, that was read earlier, describes the Kaporet and the winged cheruvim that adorned it in Exodus 25. And these images faced each other. There's actually a beautiful artistic rendition in the back of the Chumash of seeing these winged creatures facing each other. And in some way we can't comprehend it, but God's presence was said to dwell beneath or between the wings of those angels. But what did the cheruvim look like? That in the Talmud, it is said by Rabbi Abahu, he says that he offers a word play. Now, we know the cheruvim we understand as the angels, but he says with a word play, changing some vowels and some spelling, that rather than keruv, that it is kerevaya, like a child, he says. The Talmud says that Revaya is one of the names for a child. So that he is saying that the image was not an angel, but that of an angelic child, and between which God would appear. So we have thought of them as angels adoring the Ark of the Covenant, but really these are images of angelic children between which the presence of God would settle. Thus, when Jews turn in prayer towards the site of the Holy Holies, we face the site of the 10 Commandments. We are facing the place where the presence of God used to dwell, and we are facing a place that was ordained by the faces of children. And this makes sense. Children are our world's holiest of holies. Children are the ones who are the most full of purity, of hopefulness, of optimism, and potential for making our world ever more holy. And we treasure the Torah and seek to protect it. And we treasure children and seek to protect them. So Rabbi Scheinberg continues, "Dear God," he writes, "we have failed. Dear God, we have failed to protect what is most dear to us and to you. Dear God, we have failed to protect your Holy of Holies from danger. Dear God, it was our responsibility to build a society where the children, the Ravaya, whose faces overlook the Holy Ark, would be protected so that they could grow up to bring blessing into your world. It was our responsibility," he writes, "to protect Alyssa and Martin and Nicholas, Jamie, Luke and Kara, Gina, Joaquin, Eliana, Meadow, Helena, Alex, Carmen, and Peter, like all of our children, to make sure that no one would harm them. It was our responsibility to build a world where they could enjoy the blessings of youth, to fully grow into adulthood, and to plan for their bright futures. It was our responsibility to create a world safe for them, to face down anyone who would be indifferent about their safety, and anyone who would regard these losses as tolerable. It was our responsibility to learn the lessons of earlier breaches, and we have not yet done so. God, may our words of regret not simply be idle thoughts and prayers like they were the last time your Holy of Holies was breached. God, may these young souls find menucha nechona, appropriate tranquility, tahat kanfei hashchina, under the wings of the divine presence. And for the sake of our children, may you grant us the wisdom and strength to do what is necessary to keep your Holy of Holies from being pierced again, he writes. Amen to his prayer. But my second talk is different. My second talk comes from being tired of speaking about tragedies which surround us. It comes from being tired about the zero-sum game approach to these issues. My starting point is that the utopian worlds of those who want to ban guns totally simply is not possible. And the utopian or possible dystopian world of every man, woman, and child packing a gun is also not right. Thoughts and prayers are not enough. The firm objection to reasonable gun safety measures is ridiculous. While they would not have prevented this tragedy, countless other gun deaths would be stopped every year. I am not here to tell you what the right policies are, but we must have the courage and conviction to change what we are doing because it simply is not working. And I appreciate the fear that resides in the thoughts of those who feel that more guns will prevent other gun violence. It is the fear of being helpless. It is the fear of being in a scenario like that. And they said, if I had a gun, I would have been able to stop the shooter. It comes from the fear of being helpless in an encounter. For pro-gun Jews that I talk to, often they resort to the adage that if Jews had guns to fight the Nazis, we would not have been slaughtered. I don't agree with them, but I acknowledge that they are speaking from a place of fear. Further, many believe there is a real possibility that the citizenry must always have the capability of overthrowing an undemocratic government. And therefore, we need guns to have that ability to do that one day. Again, I recognize the place of fear that they are coming from. They say it was the very founding of our country, and the Second Amendment makes sure citizens always have the ability to fight back against the government. I personally read the Second Amendment, and its interplay with other amendments leads me to a different place, though. But I hear and I recognize and I honor the fear from which they are speaking. I am not a stranger to guns. That just 3 weeks ago, a congregant brought me to the gun range because they felt that if I experienced and had a lengthy conversation, which I was blessed to have, about what gun culture is, the place of guns and gun safety, that I may be swayed. Well, what I am swayed by is that the pushback against reasonable gun control, reasonable measures, is just the same as having a seatbelt in your car. But there's no conversation at all about this because they're speaking from a place of fear. But thoughts and prayers are not enough. But I also hear other fears. The fear of a mother who cannot help her son or daughter get mental health care because the backlog is huge, or their insurance doesn't cover it, or they don't even have insurance, or the stigma against mental health care has pushed them to not even identify their children's needs, or the fears of a person with mental health needs who knows what is happening to them and cannot control the dark places that they go, or even the way that they soothe themselves as they spiral deeper and deeper downward. Thoughts and prayers are not enough. We are acting from a place of fear on every side of this conversation. And in the end, we are taking no action to move us off of where we are. Reasonable gun safety measures is a must. Funding for mental health programs is a must. And yet, I read this just this week, quote, the administration's 2018 federal budget includes a 26% cut to community health services, according to the Center of Budget and Policy Priorities. We need to look at this comprehensively because the community that we are building is not what we want it to be. It is not what we want either aspirationally or just every day, that we just hope it doesn't happen in our community. But we know with the suicides in November and December, we are just crossing our fingers, hoping that we aren't touched by it, and we are, and might be. I am not a policy wonk, and I know there are insightful minds working on this. And we need to move beyond our fears, though. We have let it push us to paralysis, and we respond with thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers are not enough. I pray that we use our spheres of influence, meaning our neighbors who are staffers on the Hill or in Annapolis or in Rockville, or our neighbor who is a lobbyist or works at a think tank or works at MCPS or is a therapist or is an officer or a doctor or a mortician or an obstetrician or is just tired of offering thoughts and prayers. We must push the entrenched to move beyond their fears and positions. I want to close with another piece of Torah that comes from the book of Exodus, that here Moses is leading the Israelites and they are right up against the sea. And they are afraid because behind them is the Egyptian army and in front of them is the impossible task of crossing the sea. And Moses, in his limited wisdom, so much greater than ours and yet limited, says in the book of Exodus, Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid," Moses says. "Stand firm and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring to you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you." And then Moses says, "You only need to be still." And he was wrong. God tells him in the very next verse that he was wrong. God's response to faithfulness without action is very clear. That is what Moses offered. thoughts and prayers without action to follow it up, because Moses hears God's voice who tells him, "Why are you crying out to me?" God says. "Tell the Israelites to move forward. Raise your staff, stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the waters so the Israelites can go through the sea on dry land." Thoughts and prayers were not enough for Moses. They are not enough for us either. That we must learn from Moses at the sea. God does not only want thoughts and prayers. There comes a time when we too must take action. We must raise our staff and stretch our hands, not just only outwards, but towards each other, and offer more than thoughts and prayers. The area houses of worship in the area are organizing in many ways. And if you want to get involved, please let me know. Thoughts and prayers are not enough. Shabbat shalom.